Today's guest is someone whose story has the power to educate, move, and transform the way we talk about identity, inclusion, and empathy. Aiden Wynn is a senior content executive, DI ambassador, speaker, and storyteller who came out as trans at 18 while attending an all girls school. That moment and everything that followed shaped the way he now shows up in schools, organizations, and platforms. Not just as a voice for LGBTQ plus inclusion, but as someone who makes space for others to feel safe, seen, and respected. I'll be honest, I hesitated before reaching out to Aiden because in a world where people are quick to cancel and slower to understand, I was afraid of getting it wrong or coming across as an opportunist. But Aiden not only understood, he welcomed the conversation. In this episode, we talk about those hesitations, his journey, what schools are getting right and wrong about inclusion, and how we can all ask better questions. We'll also touch on his passion for copywriting, fitness, and why kindness and courage need to coexist in every room where change is trying to happen. This is not just a podcast about about pride or pronouns. It's about creating real dialogue year round. So let's dive in. Aiden, thank you so much for agreeing to do this podcast. It means a lot. So my first question is you came out at 18 at an all girls school. Can you take us back to that moment? What did it feel like? How was it like?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me and for that wonderful introduction. Very kind words. Yeah, so going back to when I came out, which was about over 10 years ago now. Um, Difficult, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah.
Building up to the moment where you're realizing who you are and you're figuring out what changes you need to make for yourself. So, you know, name, clothing, hair, pronouns, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a roller coaster in and of itself. But then you get to the point where you're ready to become that person publicly
Yeah.
with the people around you, and it's a frightening thing.
Yeah.
It's when people talk about coming out, I think they can sometimes think that it's a one and done sort of situation where you say it out loud and then everyone kind of knows, but it's that's a process as well. You're coming out to different people all the
Yeah.
time. Coming out at school, I remember I came out to my friends at first, a couple of my friends. Very lucky to have supportive people around me. And then actually the third or fourth person I came out to was one of my English teachers.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a very lovely experience to know that I sort of had someone in the school who would be, who would have my back.
Yeah.
Um, because obviously, sort of coming
Yeah.
out as a boy in an all girls school, there were people who had questions.
Yeah.
There were
Yeah.
people who weren't big fans of it. There
Yeah.
were teachers
Yeah.
who clearly weren't big fans of it.
Yeah.
But it's something that you get to a point where you realize you can't really hold it back anymore.
Yeah.
It's just it's so damaging to your mental health and who you know
True.
you are.
True. And I'm sure it was very brave of you because, many people to this day, even in the society has changed, but they hold themselves back
Yeah,
because of many reasons. So I believe it was very brave of you to come out at an all girls school. And also, I think, of course, your journey, has its own, what do you call, upwards and downwards
yes,
things. But I think the good thing is that your teachers were supportive. Some of the teachers were
yeah,
supportive, and your environment was supportive.
hmm,
So that made your journey slightly not easier, but I would say it's still like to an extent when
hmm,
we compare it to the other people, the stories that we
yeah,
hear and
yeah.
in news, and yeah, the way it is being portrayed in movies, cinemas. Yeah.
Exactly. I felt that even though it was difficult and I knew it was going to be difficult,
Yeah.
I felt like I could do it in that environment.
Yeah.
I if there were people sort of in my year, and like I said before, there were teachers who clearly weren't big fans of the fact that I'd done it, and
Yeah.
that's why I was saying I was and knew myself to be. But I didn't get bullied.
Yeah.
If they weren't happy with it, we just didn't really talk to each other. It was fine.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of, I think at the moment as well, it's strange because I think awareness is getting better, so
Yeah.
people are feeling more comfortable to come out, but because of that awareness, people on the other side of things are getting more angry about it. So
Yeah.
you're in a situation where there's so much more understanding and you understand yourself, but then you come out and there's so much more hostility on the other side
Yeah.
of things.
Yeah. Yeah. True. True. Do I 100% agree? So, what do you wish more people understood about the trans experience during those early stages? What you would wish that more people understood?
Mm. I think I think understanding that it's actually quite hard to understand. I couldn't explain to you in a concise way why I understand that I'm who
Yeah.
I am. That I couldn't fully,
Yeah.
put that into words because it's such a personal,
Yeah.
internal experience.
Yeah.
I think the thing that most people are missing is empathy,
Yeah.
and that might sound like quite a broad blanket statement, but I think because of the way things are talked about in the news and the way you can see so much on social media and it feels so removed, you forget about the human side of things. Like,
Yeah.
you know, you're not putting yourself through all that for no reason. Uh,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
it's it's a long process. You start by again, it'll vary for different people, but quite a standard, I guess, way of doing it. And what I did is you'll socially transition first, so
Yeah.
you'll change your name around your friends and you'll change your clothes and
Yeah.
things like that, and then it's the more of the admin side of things
Yeah.
and the medical side of things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's quite a scary place to be
Yeah.
when you're socially transitioning, but you feel like other parts of maybe like your body or your ID or something, they're not
Yeah.
matching.
Yeah.
And I think having all these negative conversations going around and having people question who you are,
Yeah.
it makes it a lot harder to do something that's already very, very
Yeah.
difficult.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
True. True. Empathy. Speaking of empathy, I think I think a lot of empathy. I believe that when it comes to LGBTQ plus community, I think it's on the surface level.
Mhm.
We uh, we say that we don't care, and but do we really not care? Like, but I think because we are being educated, we are getting educated on the surface level, through social media, through movies.
Mhm.
So we know that there is the pain. There are so many transitions, like you mentioned,
Mhm.
you go through. But are we really able to feel that in our uh,
Yeah.
from within? That is the question. That And actually, this reminds me of a few days back. I was watching this show, Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
So in that show, there was this player who came out and he said that I'm a gay. Then rest of the teammates, they said, oh, we don't care, we don't care. But Ted Lasso, he came in and he was like, no, we do care. We
Yeah.
do care that
Yeah.
you must have gone through hell lot of things,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
during your journey, and you coming out must have been hard. You have been hiding this part of yourself, so we do care.
Caring isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
If we were in a world where it didn't matter to anyone and you could just
Yeah.
wake up one day and be like, okay, I can be this person and there's not going to be any backlash, then
Yeah.
that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
People aren't going to care. But
Yeah.
in the world as it is, I think that's such a nice example because if you come out to people and they say they don't care, like, okay, well, you're going to be fine with me, whatever, but you need that care at that point. You're becoming something
Yeah.
new and you're
Yeah.
going through a lot. You need those people to
Yeah.
sort of back you up.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a really lovely example.
And so, were there any particular reactions, supportive of or otherwise, that
Mhm.
stayed with you in your journey? Was there any particular reaction that stayed with you and that, like, confirmed that, okay, you're doing the right thing?
Um, the reactions kind of they differed a lot. So
Yeah.
I think there was the side of things where people were just like, okay, great, that's what you've told me your new name, and that's just what I'm going to use, and that's really positive. All the way over to sort of the other extreme where, for example, my family at first they were quite angry
Yeah,
responses.
yeah,
They didn't understand. They hadn't really, because you try and hide it so much,
yeah,
and you go
yeah,
through different phases of, you'll try and lean into it, or and
yeah,
then you'll pull it back, and you'll try and be, I tried to be like quite feminine for a while, and
yeah.
it was there was a lot of anger there. So going through the process of sort of transition, it was a very long process from there to kind of get them to understand that and see that the way I was living my life was actually the positive way for me to live my life. But I'll go back to that English teacher. Shout out to Miss West. Um, is
Shout out to Miss Best.
Yes, yeah. Because I remember I was there with a friend and sat down, and we'd sort of called for this meeting. My friend was, coming out as non-binary and had sort of realised that about themselves. And my teacher went, "Okay, girls, what can I do for you?" And we just went, "Ah, that's the
Yeah,
thing. We're not."
yeah,
Yeah, and I think it's just the validation of someone being like, "Okay, didn't necessarily see that coming, but." I'm here to support you. I'm here to kind of protect you a little bit. If anything kind of goes wrong, you can come to me. Having that adult validation
yeah,
was a really sort of positive and powerful thing.
yeah,
And having the understanding that, you feel like you need to do this for yourself. Okay, you go and do that
yeah,
and see how you feel about it. I
yeah,
think a lot of people are scared that you're gonna transition, it'll be a big mistake, but
yeah,
unless you sort of try and you
yeah,
know try and become what these feelings are telling you you are, you're
yeah,
never going to you're never going to know. So to have that and be like, okay, I hear you, I understand you,
yeah,
I'm here to sort of back you up. I think that was a really powerful point very
yeah,
early on in my journey where I thought, okay, I'm going to be all right here.
yeah. Wow. I think, we all need a teacher like
Miss
uh,
West, yeah.
Miss West.
Agreed, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I think, yeah, we all need it, especially, children. Because, when you must have, been going with with these things. I'm sure, there must have been, confusion in your own head as well. So
Yeah.
when, yeah, you are going through a lot, mentally,
Hmm.
and when a teacher, comes in and they support, and it happens, with so many children, who
Yeah.
are mentally struggling, that am I not
Yeah.
normal, am I, what is happening with me.
Yeah.
You need that support,
You
with that,
do.
hey, it's normal.
Yeah. It's like, even if what
Yeah,
they're saying is true, you're going to get a certain way down the line and realize that actually I'd understood myself a little bit wrong. Actually, I'm not quite this, but there is something different about me. You have to let people explore that a little bit, because there are so many different ways of being
yeah,
an individual.
true,
And
true.
to be a young person and
Yeah,
feel wrong in your body and in your mind, that's
yeah,
that's quite a terrifying place to be if you don't give the support in a way that allows that person to feel like they
yeah,
can be who they need to be.
yeah,
Then you're going to push them the other way. My mental health was terrible for most of my teenage years,
yeah,
and I was really very cruel to myself. And if you don't give people the positivity and the support that
yeah,
they need, you might think that you're helping them potentially by not letting them make a mistake. But you don't know how that person feels and what's really going on inside, and b, you're actually going to push them further away. You're going to push them so that they don't feel like they can come to you,
yeah,
and they're going to sit on those feelings, and they're just going to build and build and build, and it's going to
yeah,
it's going to go south in a really not very great way.
yeah. So, because, you just, spoke about mental health, that,
Hmm.
how, you were going through, this, your own, mental health
Hmm.
journey, where you were dealing with these dilemmas,
Yeah.
and, of your new transition. How did you navigate, this mental health and self identity,
Mhm.
especially in an environment where not everyone knew what to say or
Yeah.
what to do? That must have been hard. How did you basically deal with that thing?
also not very well.
Yeah.
It was it's something that I'm a big. It's been great to see actually the amount of mental health support and talks going on in schools these days, because I
Yeah.
think it's an issue that's kind of getting worse. Kids are growing up with their
Yeah.
heads in an online world where
Yeah.
anything can be coming at them. So
Yeah.
I really, really did struggle. I had some very bad coping mechanisms that I would not recommend to anyone.
Yeah.
I put myself through quite a lot, from early teenage years up to when I
Yeah.
was 18,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and I think it's taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot of resilience.
Yeah. I'm sure.
It forced me to find more positive
Yeah.
coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
because you can't keep doing that to yourself. And
Yeah.
coming out as trans, as like, awful as those experiences can sometimes be, it's the ultimate act of self love. So
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
going to do that for yourself, then you need to take
Yeah.
another step and figure out how to let yourself get through the difficult parts
Yeah.
without kind of
Yeah.
combusting.
Yeah. 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 I'm sure even when you are going through, mental health and, basically you're struggling with self-identity
Hmm.
and the environment is partially there and partially not there, I can, only imagine the amount of resilience it takes, the kind of mental strength,
It's
it
a lot.
takes for you
But
to stand on your ground.
I don't think a lot of people see it as that, though. When you're going through it, it doesn't feel like strength. It feels like you're constantly failing almost. It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
you're waking up and you're having another bad day, or you've had another negative experience, and it
Yeah.
hurts, and so
Yeah.
you see it as a bad thing. And you maybe you've internalized all the negative stuff that people say about your
Yeah.
identity, and
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it, it feels like you're losing a battle, when
Yeah.
actually just keeping going and doing the good thing for yourself, that's a massive victory. But you don't always see that until
Yeah.
you've come out the other side, do you?
The other side, no, I actually, this is something I deeply correlate, and I'm actually able to understand, the pain, and I deeply correlate that, when you're going through with some, and especially, something this huge in your life,
Yeah,
like, it's like, you every day, like you said, that, yeah, oh my God, another negative day, and then this day, and the amount of strength it needs, like, it's not an easy thing. People
yeah.
will be like, people give up.
No, they do. They do.
Mhm.
Having getting through another
Yeah,
bad day
yeah,
isn't a. It's not a negative that you've got yourself through that bad day.
yeah,
Just because
yeah,
it didn't turn good doesn't mean that you failed in any way.
yeah,
You've done something that a lot of people would have really struggled
yeah,
with, and
yeah,
only you know how difficult that is. So you need to give
yeah,
yourself more credit, I think.
yeah. True. I 100% agree. And because it requires this much of, what do you call, strength, not many people are ready to take that journey, because they are like, I don't want to, go on that journey. Do I want that uh, negativity in my life? Am I ready to face that? Because they see that, other person is going through, and it's like, no, I am going to give up.
Yeah,
I am going to basically live this lie through my entire life.
yeah.
But
That's so much harder to put yourself through.
it
I just,
is, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
it is.
I can't
It
even,
is.
I can't imagine what that would be like. I can't imagine
Yeah.
how I would have gotten to the point I'm at without having transitioned.
Transition. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Wow. It does, like, I mean, now, again, I am able to see, basically understand things
hmm
from your experience, that, what kind of, mental strength it needs, because it's just not an easy thing to do. This is something, I, learned, through that answer.
yeah, yeah.
Right?
Oh, well, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that the sad thing is that the reason it's so difficult to come out is because of often the people in the world around you, and the way it's
Yeah.
sort of been built up. It
Yeah.
never has to be that hard.
Yeah.
Medical transition's not always the most fun thing. Like I
Yeah.
had my injection yesterday and my blood test, and it was a bit uncomfortable and things like that. But
Yeah.
the the positivity you get when you sort of look in the mirror and see how far you've come, that's incredible and it's so
Yeah.
worthwhile.
Yeah.
But coming out and being trans and being yourself doesn't have to be this horrible experience to go through. But we're in a world where I don't think people are quite ready to.
Right. Ready to. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I understand. And also, what happens is, even there are well-meaning people in your life, like your family,
hmm
like they are not going to support you, because I think somewhere somehow they are also scared the
oh yeah,
kind of basically implications and horrible things that you are going to
yeah,
receive. So even they are well-meaning,
hmm
but they are not being supportive because they know the journey that you are going, the hard journey that you are going to go.
yeah. It's fear. You know, they thought they were doing the right thing by trying to stop me from going down this path, and it
Yeah.
wasn't until I went to uni and
Yeah.
I remember. So I've got three siblings, two older, and we'd
Yeah.
helped both my older brother and my older sister move into uni.
Yeah.
Because a whole family, it was always a really lovely day. But for when I was moving, I went to my mum and I said, I just want to do it on my own. I don't want anyone to come with me because you won't use my name, and I want to go to uni as Aiden.
Agent.
I don't want to make an impression on new people and have them sort of not know what to call me or think
Yeah.
about me. Maybe they could tell I was trans. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I didn't want to go in there with that as kind of the
Yeah.
baseline.
Yeah.
So that it's difficult because then the only way to kind of get past that is them seeing over time
Yeah.
that actually I was going to be okay, and not only be okay, but I was starting to thrive in a way that I don't think I'd shown
Yeah.
of myself because I've
Yeah.
been struggling for so many years.
Yeah. When did you realize that your story could be a source of strength for others? Because this is the story that I think everybody needs to hear. So when did you realize, first realize that, okay, I'm going to share my story. I'm going to better share my story with people who need to hear, with people who need to hear it,
Mhm.
and basically giving this strength that if I can do, you can do it too.
Well, it's very lovely of you to say thank you. It's actually so when I was at uni, I'd come home from uni holidays and I'd work in a pub it's still
Ah,
down the road now.
ah,
And I did that for however many years, every holiday, some weekends.
yeah,
And because it was near to where I'd lived my whole life,
yeah,
and basically I kind of transitioned in front of all these pub
yeah,
regulars.
yeah,
And I'm sure a lot of people would have sort of stereotypes in their head about what that would be like and
yeah,
sorts of
yeah,
people I'd be dealing with on a day to day basis. But it was such a lovely, positive experience.
yeah,
Every regular there
yeah,
and was so supportive. They'd ask so many questions, and
yeah,
if anyone had had anything negative to say, and that didn't really happen, I
yeah,
knew I had like Bernard and Steve and everyone. They would have had my back 100%.
yeah, yeah,
And I think it was during all that experience, and how many people had never sort of come across a trans person and
yeah,
how much humanity they showed to me
yeah,
because they could see that I think there's something basically in having a person in your life who is the
yeah,
things that maybe you would have feared otherwise.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and they had so many questions for me. I'm a bit of an open book, so I'll answer a lot of questions. If
yeah,
it's inappropriate, I'm very much of the opinion like, okay, I will tell you why I don't want to answer that because sometimes people don't realize that it's inappropriate.
yeah, 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 yeah,
They're just being curious and they
yeah,
mean well. But it was telling my story kind of in those settings
yeah,
that made me sort of want to go ahead and tell
yeah,
it elsewhere. You mentioned in my introduction that I love writing.
yeah,
So I from the back of that, when I'd finished uni, I started sort of writing for
yeah,
magazines and stuff about my experiences because I think putting a human face on all this sort of
yeah,
trans coverage,
yeah,
I think helps people connect with it a little bit more and
true,
remember it's not this big trans terrifying
yeah,
monster thing. It's actual
yeah,
individual people with their own stories.
yeah. True, and I think it is also an important story, like you said, that when you came out, all the bar people where you used to work
Mhm.
with, they're very supportive. I think as humans, we
Yeah,
give very less credit to people in our lives.
100%.
We think that, oh, they are not going to take us like seriously, or they are not as open minded, because this is the thing with me as well. They are not as open minded as as I am, because but when you put in a situation where these people actually show you that they, like I said, that people surprise you.
Yeah,
We often give very less credit to people.
exactly.
Because,
I ended up with some allies who I don't
yeah,
think anyone would have expected to necessarily be allies, and I think that's a
yeah, yeah,
beautiful thing, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah. People do surprise us.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure. I think that's the power of education as well. It's the
yeah,
power of education. It's the power of connecting people and talking to people about your experiences.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
everyone's comfortable doing it, and that is completely
yeah,
absolutely fair. Not everyone should have to, but the more I
yeah,
think that's kind of why I like doing it. That's why I like talking about
yeah,
the side of my life.
yeah. Great to hear. Great to hear. I mean, seriously, like, but it's great to hear that, you have had a big support of people around you.
Yeah.
Great to hear. So now, I'll move on to inclusion and DEI.
Mhm.
So what do you think schools often get wrong when it comes to LGBTQ plus inclusion?
It's a really good question, and quite
Yeah.
a big one as well. I think one of the things that schools get wrong is not touching it,
Not
not
touching it.
not really going anywhere near it.
Yeah.
Um, so I've spoken in schools where I've
Yeah.
spoken to the teachers a bit, and I've had the teachers say, the students, they're not a problem, the teachers, they're not a problem, but a lot of the parents don't like that this topic is spoken about in schools.
Yeah.
And I think for that reason, a lot of schools kind of steer clear of it. They don't want any controversy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but teaching people that about pride and about inclusion just generally,
Yeah.
it's not indoctrination. It's not going to suddenly convince someone, oh, well, I'll just go and do this, because it has to be very deeply felt and it has to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
something you're very committed to.
Yeah.
I think by not talking about diversity, inclusion, LGBTQ plus
Yeah.
stuff in particular,
Yeah.
you're kind of you're sending the message that it's okay to be
Yeah.
ignorant about it, and it's
Yeah.
okay to not be an inclusive person.
Yeah.
It's okay to exclude people,
Yeah.
and you're also allowing the other people in the room who maybe do feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
You're telling them that this isn't an environment where I
Yeah.
can actually be open and be myself, and no
Yeah.
one's had any education, so they're not going to support me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you believe that there's a but topics are not being touched upon to begin with. Let's talk. I mean, getting into understanding, having a deeper understanding is a faraway thing. But the first thing is that it needs to be basically, and I 100% agree that it needs to be what do you call it, installed in the education system,
Agreed. Yeah.
to make an impact, to make a real impact, because that is where that is the first step. Any kid who is going to school, or I think that is the first step that they needs to that, yeah, I think that is there. I mean, it should start from schools
Hmm.
itself,
Yeah.
because that is the first step as a society.
Oh, for sure, for
Mm.
sure. It's if we
Yeah,
start talking about these things when people are younger,
yeah,
just showing people that there are different ways to be yourself and that that's okay,
yeah,
and there are people around you who are going to be different to you, and that's okay.
yeah,
Then
yeah,
I'd like to think that if we started doing that on a bigger scale, we wouldn't be getting to the same sort of points we're at now,
yeah, yeah,
where there's so much hostility.
yeah,
Like, no one can be happy with the way all this
yeah,
anti-LGBTQ plus stuff is playing
yeah,
out, because
yeah,
on one side of things are people who are really angry, and on
yeah,
the other side are people really scared. I
scared,
don't
yeah,
understand how that's beneficial to anyone. So if we can start educating from a younger age, just that
yeah,
tolerance is a good thing, and there are so many different ways to live your life, and
yeah,
that's fine,
yeah,
then hopefully we wouldn't get to the point where people have
yeah,
to be angry or scared.
yeah. And I think education is a system
Hmm.
that should support, especially encourage,
Hmm.
I think, it should, it is not something, needs to have, but, a must have,
Hmm.
where, they are, basically teaching students that, we, as a society, we have all sort of, we all, we have all sort of people, we have to basically hold spaces